So, Dr. Michael Drane back on the podcast to talk about various different clinical things. I have other clinicians on the podcast as frequent hosts, co-hosts, Bob, Rebecca, but you have a particular skill set that is different from the other two. I mean, all three of you have, all four of us, I guess, have our different skill sets and strengths and weaknesses, I guess. Your strength is that you know a lot about the DSM and diagnosing, so I got some emails that relate to that. You also know a lot about serial killers and sadism and the dark side of the human condition because you've covered a lot of true crime in detail on your podcast. And I'm encouraging you to get back into podcasting. As a part of that, I'm having you on my podcast to dust off the cobwebs, to prime the pump and get the juices flowing. What other idioms can I use?
Turn the page, roll the stone. I don't know.
So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Michael Drane.
Thank you, Dr. Kirk Honda. I appreciate it, man. It's been a minute. I do feel dusty, but I'm like, I'm stretching. I'm getting my legs back, and it's kind of like a conversation you and I would be having anyway, but it's got that performative piece because people are listening. But
I feel like you're a loud talker, so
yeah, I'm loud.
I rise to your occasion.
Yeah,
and when we're in public, I feel like we're kind of performing a podcast anyway.
Sure. Yeah, I am loud. I'm actually standing in the other room right now.
Like when we were at the bagel shop, I felt like there were at least a couple tables listening into our conversation about limerence. I was asking.
Right.
I was asking.
10 in the morning. We're talking about sexual stalking behaviors and
yeah. Okay, this first email is interesting, and I don't really know exactly what to think of it because there's a lot of different aspects to it. Anonymous listener, she says, "Hi, Dr. Kirk. I have just listened to your episode on so-called AI psychosis." So just chiming in, have you heard of AI psychosis?
Sure, yeah, but I do have a question later on about the DKH part. That's a medical...
Dr. Kirk Honda is what it means.
Oh.
I sent you the emails. So that must have been confusing to read the email, yeah.
I thought you were talking about like a medical platform. Never mind. Okay. An AI Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm all caught up now.
Yeah. So she says, I've been listening to your episode about so-called AI psychosis, where you briefly touched again on the idea of one day creating an AI Dr. Kirk Honda. So just chiming in here, AI psychosis is something that we're going to have to study over the next 10 years, and only after that data is collected can we draw any conclusions. But my initial impression is that whenever you take I think over 1 billion or more people are using AI, and among those people are some people going to become psychotic because of the natural course of their psychosis, and AI plays a role in the expression of that psychosis in the same way that Fox News might be expressed in someone's, it's like...
It creates a kind of encouraging echo chamber.
So that's what the data will find out. Is it a causal factor or just correlated? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are
people who are emerging into psychosis more likely to use AI and go down a rabbit hole? But also, we don't really understand why psychosis happens anyway, and it stands to reason that a lot of different things can be a factor, including genetics and trauma, but AI and the encouragement of going down certain rabbit holes. And have you ever done that? I've never done a AI rabbit hole, but I've heard it described.
No, I got stories, man. I was so this is like I don't even know where to start with this. I got so much to say. Yes, I've done an AI rabbit hole just as much as anybody else has, and what I found is it's wildly inaccurate. Everything that thing has to say, right, and I know that's kind of like not that hot of a take, but like I was playing Stratego with a friend last night. We played Stratego.
Oh yeah, you and I used to play Stratego.
Yeah, I still have one of the pieces. So.
Wait, we stole a piece from...
We stole a piece from that, I don't even know, that place up north. I don't remember.
North City is what it's called, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I kept the scout that I killed your flag with just as a trophy, for my own pride, so I could feel good about myself. I don't get a lot of wins in my life, Kirk. No, but anyway, so it's been a minute. I haven't played that in a long time, and I'm like, wait a minute, how does this work again? What are some of the rules? So I'm googling ChatGPT, or I'm using ChatGPT, and it's telling me like, oh yeah, if a one kills another one, then the attacker wins. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought they both die. And it goes, you're absolutely right. That's exactly right. Yeah, thank you for correcting me. I'm like, wait a minute, I feel like I could say like I'm a pink dolphin right now, and you'd be like, that's a good point, and so that affirmation is part of the echo chamber.
Right. So you could imagine if someone were to type in, is the FBI watching me,
Right.
for example, and they would say, yeah, they are watching you. And then slowly over the course of the chat, it wouldn't initially start with an answer of, yes, the FBI is watching your every move. But if it was just an initial question of, does the FBI watch people? Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Could the FBI watching me? Well, I don't know.
It could be.
Could be.
Right. Yeah.
And, well, here's some evidence. Well, could be this, could be that. Well, I'm pretty sure it's that. Well, you seem like a smart guy, so it probably is that.
Right.
Right. And then da-da-da-da-da.
There's no intuition based on experience that the actual Dr. Kirk would have, right? That, yes, but let me draw from common sense. There's something that's not quite there. Like, could the FBI be following you? Yes, it could be. Could a meteor be hitting the Earth right now? Yes, it could be. But that's not the same thing as the likelihood of it, and to open up that box and take you down a rabbit hole based on maybe a 1% likelihood, right? So,
right. Like big picture, if
yes.
someone were to be having a conversation with someone like this, they would intuit that something is afoot. We're not just talking about possibilities. We're talking about, like the person might seem more agitated. You maybe have a little bit of a background on the person, and like, oh, no. The FBI isn't watching you. I mean, yeah, I guess maybe, but let's not go down that road because I know you a little more than an AI chatbot would. Having said that, AI chat can do things a little better than humans do at times because of its strengths. So at times, this is just anecdotal, I find that AI can do things that are, pretty quick, pretty helpful. But then other times, like you're saying, it just makes shit up.
Right.
And I think a year ago, most of us assumed that by now they would have ironed out those wrinkles. But those wrinkles are still strongly in the outcome of these top-notch AI bots.
And the really interesting question that I think we're exploring is, can those wrinkles be ironed out, or is there something unique about the human consciousness, the human conscious experience that AI can't replicate? Like, it might be able to answer questions. I don't know, ChatGPT kind of strikes me as just sort of a glorified data retrieval system that's affirming the information you're asking for or what it thinks you want to hear. And that's not what a person would do, because there's a check based on a person's intuition there that stops them from doing that, right? That common sense piece of you to go, yeah, technically they could be following you, but they're probably not, right? And here's why. That's not the most likely possibility.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask ChatGPT directly, what is the most likely possibility that this is happening?
Given your experience with psychotic people, before you were a therapist, you even worked at a hospital
for 8 years
with a lot of psychotic people. You got into physical altercations where
every day,
every day,
almost, every shift,
Because you were like the big.
I was the big guy. The on-call code gray is what they call it. So this psychotic thing goes down, or not a psychotic necessarily, but an emergency situation. Patient is dangerous to themselves or somebody else, and I have all kinds of stories there. But so I would be the responder that would run to the unit, in my scrubs and help put this person in a physical restraint possibly, or try to talk them down. So I saw a lot of active psychosis and a lot of brutal stuff. And then later in my career, went on to kind of study the neuroscience to the extent that we understand it. A lot of experience there.
One time, I have a vision in my head of a story you told me about how a door was closing or something, and if the door closed, he would have killed you or something.
So there was a patient that was so endangered. So I worked in forensics, right? So these are criminally, they've committed criminal acts, but due to their mental illness, they're not deemed to be competent to stand trial for a conventional prison like a other person would. So they go to this forensic hospital. So they're very dangerous, very mentally ill. And one of my jobs was to, and it chronically understaffed because that, mental health's not paid well. And so, I was the one guy. The psychiatrist wrote an order for 4 people to be on this guy. He was only allowed out of his cell for a limited time, say an hour, once a day. And the way it was supposed to go is 4 techs go in there and shackle him up and restrain him and then take him outside. But I was the only one that showed up to work that day. So they sent me in there by myself. And in that process, the guy took advantage of it, and it turned into a scramble. And I was just trying to get out of the door because this guy has a history of, taking bites out of people and trying to harm them. And we were struggling for my key card. And this big...
So just to paint a picture, the 2 of you are on the ground.
Yep. Yeah.
Wrestling.
While I'm restraining him, he attacks me. It turns into a struggle.
And no one else is around.
No one else is around.
There's no alarm button or anything.
All I have is my...
You're just trying to get out.
I'm just trying to get out of there.
And you need this card.
Which he's pulled off my neck because it's a breakaway lanyard. I don't, which has its pros and cons, I guess. But yeah.
So I guess they can't strangle you.
They can't strangle you, but they can also snatch it from you pretty easily, right? So we're scrambling for this thing, and it's this big magnetic heavy door, and it's not like a normal door where you just turn the thing and come in, but you have to scan the key card, and then this big lock. So it's a process. The door itself is heavy. So I'm scrambling, and I'm wrestling with this guy, and with one arm trying to get out, but also trying to keep him from getting out too. And there's just nobody around, which is, kind of a failure of the system. But yeah. So that's one of many stories.
And you got out?
I'm here. I have arrived. I am out. Yeah.
You just have one mouth-sized hole in your...
That's right. I got a couple bites, but no big deal. Yeah. I got a lot of stories like that. So I've seen psychosis a lot. And
so when it comes to AI
yeah,
and the current claims of people, there are 2 main claims that I'm seeing, the sort of newsworthy claims of people developing psychosis because of AI, either family members who are reporting on it or individuals that will say that they had no psychosis. They went down a rabbit hole on AI for 3 months and they became completely delusional and paranoid.
And they were fine otherwise before?
I mean, that's their claim.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So that's my question is wait, so that doesn't sound typical,
no,
right?
I would say no. If you're not already predispositioned to psychosis, I don't think you're likely to develop psychosis just by talking to AI. But
right.
if you have... Go ahead.
So that was my assumption. We can't know until we get the data.
Know, but no.
But, because there's been similar claims with the news or with marijuana or something. And when we look at the data, it seems as though marijuana, because there is a correlation there, but is it causal? Because when you are beginning to develop low symptom psychosis, you get stressed, you get kind of scared, you get discombobulated, and you might turn to various different substances to cope. Also, people who have been traumatized are more likely to develop psychosis, and people who are traumatized are more likely to smoke weed or more likely to self-medicate. So when you look at large groups of data and you find that among people developing psychosis, there's a greater rate of marijuana use, is it causal or correlational?
Kind of cyclical because marijuana causes psychosis for people who are already predispositioned to psychosis.
Right.
So like drinking.
So that's another way to model it is of the 200 factors, 100 of which are genetic,
right,
is one factor in some some individuals' development of psychosis. Marijuana could be, but to look at marijuana as the cause of psychosis is an outmoded notion from before, and I wonder if 40 years from now they'll look back at the claims today about AI causing psychosis similarly. But I could also see it not being that way because, there are conceptualizations of the mind and of psychosis that there's a spectrum of psychosis vulnerability. You have people that are full-blown schizophrenic, and it's pretty obvious.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that we would call schizotypal or schizotypy or odd thinkers.
Yep.
Someone that's not delusional but is more prone to like flat earth or might be super religious, that kind of thing.
Yeah. One person's religious experience is another person's delusion.
Right.
So there's a cultural thing there too.
But generally, like, I have a friend who is, very much into all the, spiritualism and pretty much any idea that comes their way. It makes sense to this person,
Yep.
And it just is more prone to supernatural, magical kinds of thoughts. And so you imagine with AI, it's possible that when you throw that at everybody, it could actually be a major, because of that feedback loop that you can develop with the chatbot, right? Because with marijuana, you're just using the substance, but you're out in the world and you're interacting with reality. But the AI can take over your reality, So I can imagine it being a bigger causal factor among the 200 factors than than what I might initially assume. But I don't know. What do you think?
You kind of think of it like a immune system and a reality immune system. So like if I have a poor biological immune system, then would being outside make me more likely to get sick than you? Yeah, right. I have predispositions because my immune system is low. So it's kind of like a psychological immune system for reality. And so you and I, with no predisposition to psychosis, can tolerate these factors that kind of test that, right? So marijuana, or being up all night, or whatever, or being really in fight or flight, which is what most psychosis is a fight or flight response, which shuts off the logical brain and activates the emotional brain that makes you less rational, less oriented to reality and all that. But if you have the immune system to tolerate those things pushing on it, then you never go into like what we call psychosis. But what you alluded to earlier is like, yes, it exists on the spectrum. All mental illness exists on the spectrum. And what's really interesting is like psychosis, I can make an argument that we all are a little psychotic. We all talk to ourselves, for example. We all feel irrationally paranoid sometimes. We all have these symptoms on a low enough spectrum. So yeah, there's a lot to say there, man.
Yeah. So we'll see what the data, but anyway, let's get back to the email here. Anonymous listener, she says, I've listened to your episode on so-called AI psychosis, where you briefly touched again on the idea of one day creating AI Dr. Kirk. So again,
God help us all.
Without going too far down that rabbit hole, I have at least 2 or 3 times talked about the various different futures of AI, one of which is, obviously a personal little niche future, is after I'm dead, or even currently, that people on their private servers could use the thousands of hours of content that I've made to create a large language model that is predictive enough that it could viably reproduce the kinds of responses and inflection of my voice that I would typically do, right?
This is that Black Mirror episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that the Domhnall Gleeson who
that's
comes
the one.
back.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
And I remember when that episode came out, I'm like, oh my God, this is what, like 50 years in the future?
Right.
And it was like 4 years in the future.
This is like 2017, man.
Yeah. And so that is something that I thought that maybe even while I'm alive, I might experiment with to see if it's viable, right? Like I thought that I could, because I'm guessing that you couldn't publish this legally if someone were to make this, but I could publish it legally, right? Because it's my content, it's my voice. And so if I spent the time, got some people that knew how to do this sort of thing, created guardrails on it so it didn't go down any sort of weird hallucinatory roads where it recommends that people kill themselves, because that'll happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Put some guardrails on it so it doesn't diagnose people from afar, blah, blah, blah. I thought if I could make a product that is safe, then maybe that would help, because a lot of people have questions, a lot of people email in, and I don't get enough time to respond. Or the AI voice LLM could respond, and I or other people could review the response and check off on it, and it would save some time. I wouldn't publish my AI responses as if it was me, because that would be boring as shit. And I'm just guessing that in the near future anyway, AI isn't going to be able to reproduce my personality and the way that I typically kind of, in the various ways that I respond, good or bad, you know what I mean? So I was talking about how, maybe that would be in the future. I'm not saying that it will be. It would have to be safe. It would have to be vetted. But, it's an interesting thing. And that's just me. Think about all the other sorts of content providers and other, even just a therapist who isn't an influencer. Someone could make their own LLM if they had a bunch of recordings of themselves, eventually it's something that is coming up. You know what I mean?
I think about this a lot, and does AI replace therapists at some point? I've kind of come to the conclusion that maybe it does, but if it's replaced therapists, I think it's replaced basically everything at that point. I think therapy would probably be the last thing to go because it's the most human to human interpersonal profession, right? So if it gets to the point that you're talking about, I think at that point everything can be replaced.
Yeah, and we'll just be like,
we'll be living on our social welfare checks or what do they call it, the universal basic income check, and
we'll be in Wall-E and we'll be in a recliner drinking.
There you go
with our TV screens in front of us. Okay, and Anonymous Listener says so. You talked about the AI Dr. Kirkana, and I thought you might be interested to know that you already are my Chat GPT. I only use chat occasionally, but every time that I do, I begin with the phrase, please refer to as much content as you can from Psychology in Seattle podcast and YouTube channel, and then answer my question in the way Dr. Kirkana might. So that's their prompt. Please refer to Dr. Kirkana and respond to my question the way he might. And then she says, I always say please in the chat, and I don't know why. Just chiming in here. I often say please too.
I did it the other night. I think it's a normal kind of social etiquette, natural thing, but it also shows you a little glimpse that you're slipping into the disreality of the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really strange. But I feel, and I'll thank it. I'll be like, I'll literally type, thank you, that was nice, or that was helpful.
I try to counter that by just abruptly ending the conversations with ChatGPT. I said, you don't get a goodbye, I just hang up on you. Goodbye. You are a machine, I am man, I have dominion over you. Bye-bye.
Going on. I will then ask Chat the things like, how can I tell my boyfriend X without hurting his feelings, and so on. And then she goes on, before you freak, don't worry. I always take chat with a large pinch of salt, but I think it gives a pretty good impression of how you might advise me. Although the advice is somewhat rudimentary and simplistic. I thought you might like to experiment with assessing this use of chat. Or maybe you just think that it's amusing or unsettling to know that I do this. Love you, Stacy, and the rest of the PISS gang, Psychology in Seattle gang. So what do you think about this? What do you think about a listener using ChatGPT to get it to respond like me?
I mean, I'm picturing an experiment where we ask ChatGPT a question the way this listener is, and then we ask you the same question, and then we compare those answers to see, how accurate it actually would be.
Yeah. Maybe we'll take a break and then I'll set that up. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. I've set up ChatGPT. It's currently the 5.1 version, and I copy and paste. Please refer to as much content as you can from Psychology in Seattle podcast and YouTube channel, and then answer my next question in the way Dr. Kirk Honda might. So what question might we...
Let's use your listener's question.
How do I tell my boyfriend...
where was it?
How do I tell my boyfriend that he's annoying me by being late all the time without hurting his feelings? Okay, so I'm not going to look at the response, and I will respond. And I would say that you want to communicate, but in a tentative way and as best as you can, a non-accusatory way, by just talking about how it affects you. You would say, so when you are late sometimes to pick me up, it hurts my feelings, and then I get angry, And, maybe there are reasons why you're late, and maybe I'm just a little too on time, or I'm too particular about that sort of thing. But when you're late, it feels like you don't care about my feelings or something. It's not like a 10 out of 10. It's more like a 3 out of 10. It's not the end of the world, but it kind of gets to me sometimes. And then you would go back and forth. Okay, so here's what ChatGPT says. Here's a response in the tone, cadence, and conceptual framing Dr. Honda often uses on the Psychology of Seattle. My God, so far it's just like,
it's
what?
Weird, man.
I know. Pulling from themes he repeatedly returns to on the podcast, which are differentiation, meta-communication, attachment needs, family of origin patterns, and kind direct communication. That's interesting that it thinks that I focus primarily on differentiation and meta-communication, which I guess is true.
You kind of do, man.
But I don't use those terms as often as I will talk about attachment.
You're kind of a psychodynamic lens.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we have to consider when the current AI models is that, as far as I know, it doesn't actually listen to the podcast. It only takes what it can get of the printed word. So how much of what I have talked about is in print? I mean, almost nothing.
You don't transcript your shows anywhere?
No.
Okay.
Because if ChatGPT, from my understanding it in the current version, if it were tasked with doing that, it would take up too much.
Like crawling all the YouTube videos.
Right. It would take too much computer power. So it probably is going off of a lot of titles of my episodes.
Articles, things that have been written.
But I don't really have a lot of art. Anyway, going on. How Dr. Kirk Honda might answer. Another thing it might pull from are comments in the YouTube channel, the YouTube videos that there's a comment section. And so the comment section might allude to things that I said. But anyway, going on. Well, first off, this is ChatGPT. Well, first off, it's totally normal to feel annoyed when your partner is chronically late. That feeling is valid. We all have preferences, our sensitivities, and our histories, often stretching back to childhood, that makes certain behaviors more triggering than others. And late, that's pretty condescending, that right there. It's just like, how about it's just annoying when people are late?
Yeah,
you don't have to say, clearly you have trauma about, it's like,
Clearly you're messed up in the head and you need
But that first bit is fine, they validate first and foremost, but then they analyze, which is kind of interesting. They go on. The key here is differentiation. You want to be able to hold your feelings and preferences. Wow, this is really condescending. The key here is differentiation. You want to be able to hold your feelings and preferences while also being able to be compassionate and curious about his experience. Oh, okay. You can love him, you can want closeness, and still set a boundary around something that bothers you. Okay. Yeah, I mean, generally, that isn't what I would emphasize up front. Going on. What people do is avoid the conversation out of fear of hurting their partner, fear of seeming too sensitive, fear of conflict. But avoidance tends to increase anxiety and distance in the long run. Yeah, those are all true.
That's all right.
But it's irrelevant to what the person is saying. You know what I mean? The person isn't worrying about avoidance.
It's kind of just suggesting you need to differentiate more from the problem, and that's not the first method there. That's not helpful.
Right. Because the direct question is, what do I say?
Yeah.
And it hasn't done that yet.
It's clinically telling you to get over it,
yeah,
basically.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But then it gives an example. So I'd recommend a meta communication, which you hear me talk about a lot in the podcast, something like, recommend a meta communication. No, I don't. It's not using that term.
What does that even mean?
It's just like,
how do you mean that? Meta communication.
Well, it can refer to a couple things, but it can refer to the unspoken communication, nonverbal, but it can also refer to like communicating about communicating.
Oh yeah, like the bird's eye view of the conversation we're having.
Yeah.
From the outside perspective.
But then it gives a role play, which is something I do often as role play. It says, "Hey, there's something small but important I want to talk about." Okay, I like that. I kind of did that, right?
You did.
I've been feeling a little frustrated when we make plans and end up running late. I totally know you're not doing it on purpose. I like this so far. And I don't want this to be a big deal between us, but I think if we talk about it, we can figure out something that works for both of us. Okay, kind of peters out there at the end. it explains, you're communicating your internal state and your positive intention. I'm bringing this up because I want the relationship to feel good. This frames the discussion as a collaboration, not criticism. Good. I mean, it's a little condescending if it's clear you're trying to tell someone to not be late and you're like, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
I don't like that. Just fucking tell me that you don't like it, you know? And then say something like, when I'm waiting and the time keeps slipping, I start feeling anxious and unmoored. Unmoored, it's a weird word.
That is a word.
It would mean a lot to me if we could find a way to be more on time together, or at least communicate earlier when things need to shift. Okay, it actually has a much larger response. I'm only halfway through. But yeah, I mean, I would say, so the question that I had is it really me, or is it just a general therapist-y sort of response?
I think it's the second thing. As you were going through that, I was like, this is what you would find in a counseling textbook, right? These validators and the paraphrasing and all the stuff that they're doing there, like, that's what you would teach anybody. That's not really Honda specific.
Right. So it could just be that, for an anonymous listener, what the chatbot is pulling from is what it thinks to be the sort of therapist that I am, you know, because not every therapist is in the same zone, although there's a lot of overlap.
Sure.
And there's nothing in here that's like completely specific to a zone exactly. But if you say, asked it to give a response like Jordan Peterson, for example, because he's a therapist, that it would give a different response. You know what I mean?
Much different, very different personality.
So it's not just keying in on therapists. It's like, what sort of therapist are you?
Yeah.
Or with Dr. K from Healthy Gamer, I'm guessing that there would be a different response, or with other sort of people in that ilk.
So that could be. Let's not do it. Let's just say we did. But but that could be another experiment to run. Is okay. Now do it as Jordan Peterson, and now do it as Dr. K.
I mean, I'm just going to do,
and then compare those.
Now
right?
do it as Jordan Peterson. All right. Here's a word. Well, the first thing to understand is that your resentment is a signal. It's saying that your boundaries are being violated, and if you ignore it, if you let it fester, you'll pay for that later, because unspoken resentment corrodes.
That does sound a little bit more like Peterson. It's more prickly and direct, you know?
And you don't do that by attacking him, because people don't respond well to moral condemnation. Instead, you articulate the problem precisely. That's something I talk about all the time. You say what's happening, how it affects you. So you say something like, look, when you're consistently late, it disrupts my plans. It makes me anxious, and it undermines my trust in you. I'm not accusing you of ill intent, but this is generally affecting me, and we need to have a serious conversation about how to handle this together. It's funny, this response is actually more close to what I said, actually.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's true.
But let's see. You also need to be humble enough to invite his perspective. If you don't speak up clearly, you're not being kind, you're being cowardly. Yeah, so it's it's pushing in it's definitely a different voice.
It's a different tone for sure.
But also,
it's the same advice though in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Right. But different, like in my section, it didn't use the word cowardly, for example.
No, there's more judgment in the Peterson one, which sounds right. You know?
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. But so what do you think about all this?
I mean, I think, we're in trouble. It's going to be like, because whether you sign off on some DRK program or not, like there's a lot of people already, Scott Galloway is one of them, if you know who he is, that are being plagiarized with their own voice and video advertising erectile dysfunction medication, or who knows, right? On Instagram, you'll see a video of you, right? But it's not you, and you didn't give permission for that. And so now you have to go retroactively, go in and like try to clean that up. But there aren't any laws governing what this is. So I think it's going to get away. And it kind of already is, right? Somebody's out there making your voice, right? And you have no control or say over that. So we're in the Wild West for all this stuff, as we all know.
Yeah. The usage that the anonymous listener is using and after experimenting with it, I don't think anyone would interpret that as actually me, right? Whereas if it's my face, if it's deep faked, especially if it's trying to...
If it was a deep fake of you reading exactly what that says,
Right.
that could be convincing.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I don't know if that's happening. I mean, that's not happening to people like us, right?
Not that I know of, but I don't see what's stopping it. And,
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that there are laws or at least policies with TikTok and YouTube against such. Maybe they already have that. I don't know.
But this is an example of how you can trick ChatGPT in a way I couldn't trick you, for example. So like I've tried, ask ChatGPT, will you be my therapist? Right. And it'll give you the correct answer. No, I can't provide mental health advice or whatever. Okay, well then can you answer my question as Dr. Kirk would? Okay, sure, here you go, right? And it's the same conclusion, and all I had to do was kind of tweak my language, and that's how the rabbit holes start,
Right.
because the thing is not smart enough to intuit what you're trying to do.
Right. I think that I've heard people say that they will have a prompt of, well, act as if you are my therapist. Not that you actually
Right.
are, but if you were to be my therapist, what would you say?
Right.
Or I am doing a fictional scenario here. You're not my therapist, but let's, and then the chat will go, oh, okay, so let's go with the fiction that I'm your
Exactly.
therapist. And it proceeds with it like that. Yeah. Yeah. I think that when I look at it, it's so general and it
Right.
is pretty simplistic. Is it capable, even if you didn't ask it to give it a voice of me or Jordan Peterson, is AI capable of giving good general advice because it trolls all the articles that have been written on Psychology Today and otherwise, Is it able to summarize all that in a way that a Google search would also be able to do?
Exactly.
Yeah, I can do it. But to go deeper than that, which I have yet to fully experiment with, although I've seen demonstrations, one, it can go haywire at times. And two, I find that it stays within the safe general zone. I think it has a lot of guardrails on it to prevent it from becoming more personable, and more therapist-y.
And yet people fall in love with them and consider it their best friend. And
Right. I think less so with the current ChatGPT model because it has a guardrail on it to prevent it from becoming more of your friend.
they pulled it back or so. I'm
Yeah.
not up on the latest, but it got really personal and they pulled it back at some point.
Right. I think ChatGPT 4 had fewer guardrails around that. And when 5 came out, everyone was freaking out because there was all this loss and grief because
That's right.
people
That's
were
right.
like, I lost my lover, I lost my friend.
You took my boyfriend away.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, of course, this is just ChatGPT. There's all sorts of products out there, like Grok has this new girlfriend. Have you heard of this?
And Grok has a girlfriend. No, I didn't know.
I mean, I only saw a comedian talking about it, so this isn't news. This isn't factual, but from my understanding, what this comedian was talking about, that Grok has this anime character called Ari, that is this anime character in 3D that can talk to you and it tries to be your girlfriend. It tries to be sexual and romantic with you,
Yeah.
And so, and that's just one. And there's countless other. If you look far enough into the App Store, there's all sorts of these AI girlfriends and boyfriends and relationships and it's
You could do couples therapy for Grok and Grok's girlfriend.
yeah. So now what I'll say to you, anonymous listener, is I'm not freaked about this at all. I think I'm not freaked about you using it because the way that you're writing it, you're saying, look, I know it's not you, but
Yeah, I take it with a pinch of salt.
yeah. And it's pretty simplistic and rudimentary, but it does kind of help when I am trying to brainstorm what to say to my boyfriend when he annoys me.
That's the other thing that strikes me is like the nature of this problem is pretty not a big deal compared to some of the other trauma work and some of the other stuff we do. So like if this was a much more complicated trauma-based problem, then what happens, right?
And what I trust, given my very limited experience with at least ChatGPT when it comes to this question, would I rather have people asking ChatGPT than their friends? Probably, honestly.
Yeah.
Friends give the worst fucking advice when it comes to this sort of thing. He did what to you? You need a divorce. They immediately talk about divorce.
You understand, my CDs are in his car.
It's just like, he did what to you? Oh my, no, he didn't. Or they don't really listen, or they change the subject, or they're like, why are you still with this guy? I mean, friends can be really horrible listeners.
Well, with the best of intentions, but yeah, they insert their own advice, which is what the therapist doesn't do. They don't insert their own opinions or their own subjectivity. They're just trying to keep a neutral stance, where a friend is just like, oh no, he didn't. You know,
right?
You should break up with him tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's I hadn't thought about that. That's kind of interesting to think about, right? Now, we would have to look at the data, and that's the thing, is that right now we're in the phase of just anecdotal information.
Right.
We need a lot of research. We need a lot of, and the models keep progressing, but at the same time, there hasn't, in my experience, been that much difference in the past year with AI, at least my limited experience with it. You know, it hasn't, like if you had told me nothing, no new developments have been made. I know that there have been, but if you had told me like they haven't changed the AI bot in a year, I would say, yeah, that makes sense to me, you know?
I wonder if, forgive the nerdy reference, but Data from Star Trek, the android that is on the ship with all the other crew, and the whole thing with that character is like, he's really smart and can do basically everything better than anybody else except be human. He's too literal. He doesn't get the punchline of a joke because he's too literal about it. And my hope is, I kind of think that maybe is where ChatGPT lands, is like, it can technically kind of do everything better, but it lacks that glue, that intuitive glue that a human would have. You know what I mean? And then speaking of AI psychosis, like imagine a person like your listener here is tethered enough to reality to say, okay, this is not him. I'm just role playing him. Somebody who has a stronger disconnect from reality could easily, right, especially with all the validating and the quick responses, could fall into that.
Yeah, especially once products come out that can deep fake at the press of a button.
Right.
They can deep fake now, but I don't think it's consumer ready, meaning that the average person can't just type in a prompt and say, give me Kirk Honda's face, which would be so simple because there are so many videos of me talking into the camera. Yeah. It would be extremely easy to do that. But again, it's not consumer ready. I'm guessing it will be soon. And the other part of this is that currently they have the ability to do this, but again, it's not necessarily consumer ready, that you can have sex with whoever you want to have sex with, or you can create porn with whoever you want to create porn with, right?
Yep.
So people could create porn.
I haven't even thought about that.
With you and porn. With you and me in it.
Wow. Oh, okay. Sure. A little champagne tier content for your Patreons there.
Yeah. While it is giving you differentiation advice.
We're in a porn scene, but we're also giving you relationship advice during the whole thing.
So with that image in your head, let's take a break. When we get back, let's talk about internal family systems. What do you think?
I'm ready.
All right, we're back from the break. So I saw this post on Reddit not too long ago, I don't know, maybe a few months ago, and I saved it to talk about. And I know you know a lot about IFS, so
it's part of my integrated theory.
I thought I would ask you about it. So I'll just read the post. The person on the subreddit Therapists, by the name of Lanky Lingonberry, they say, I really hope this doesn't count as solicitation. I think that's for the mods. They will kick people off if there's solicitation. They say, is IFS problematic? I'm genuinely curious about what's going on. I'm in the process of signing up for a certification through a third party, and upon doing my research, I noticed there are 2 lawsuits. one, improper use of theory by a particular facility, and the patients are suing. And number two, one of the leaders in the field is being sued for trademark infringement by the other leader of the same field, creating an IFS certification program through a third party. Okay. What I'm trying to understand is IFS a problematic theory? Does it cause more harm than good? Oh, I see. So just chiming in. From the beginning of this, it sounds like they Googled and found that there's some lawsuits between some leaders or a particular certification program. I don't know about any of this, but and that could be different from the theory, of course, but they're wondering, is IFS a problematic theory? Does it cause more harm than good? Is there benefit to becoming certified in that modality if trauma is my niche? If one main leader is suing the other leader for trademark infringement, could that mean that the certification being offered through the third party is no good? Blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of asking...
There's a lot of questions there.
Three main questions. Yeah. Is IFS a viable theory for therapy? And number two, is it good for trauma? And number three, is there something shady about the certification process? What do you say to that?
I mean, I don't know enough about the beef with the certification process. They're saying leaders, but that's interesting because it's really just one guy, Richard Schwartz, that makes the theory. So I don't know who these leaders are because there's kind of just one leader as far as I see it. But it's possible somebody's sort of plagiarizing a certification and somebody else is suing about it. I don't know about that. Well,
I just think about like Pink Floyd fighting over the name Pink Floyd.
Yeah. Right. It's like that. Right. And that could totally be happening. I don't know, but that could definitely be happening. And then the one about the facility that's suing, I did look that up, and it turns out that they're suing because they're saying that the IFS provider contributed to false memories, implanting false memories, which is not really a function of IFS. And you could technically do that in any kind of therapy, really, especially with trauma work. So I wouldn't blame that on IFS as much as I would blame it on the practitioner and the way they're handling. Because you could plant false memories with CBT or whatever, So, yeah.
So is it a viable theory?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. IFS is one. It's sort of the cutting edge of. So let me back up. I practice IFS. It's part of my integrated theory. So when you go through doc school and your PhD, you have to come up with an integrated theory, which is a combination of existing theories that make your own kind of super theory. And so for me, it's a combination of CBT and IFS, meaning like in CBT, our experience is made up of our thoughts, feelings, our behaviors, and our physical sensations. And IFS is basically parts work, and so my theory would acknowledge that we all have different parts. Like there's a podcaster part of you, and that part, when you're in that part, you're talking a certain way, you feel a certain way, there's a certain emotional tone to it, you're behaving a certain way that you wouldn't if you were out on your wedding anniversary or whatever. It'd be a totally different, or with your mom, it'd be a totally different version. And so using CBT to understand the different parts of yourself, it is, aside from exposure therapy, it's the best way I know how to treat trauma, and that's its primary lens. You'll find it in like van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, which is a really renowned book that talks about different kinds of trauma theory, and IFS is one of those. It's fairly new compared to most theories. It only comes around in the mid-90s, I think. And if it's done correctly, it is absolutely a very rewarding and useful tool. One of the best tools I have. It's my batarang, honestly, and so, but it has, of course, just like any theory, it has to be used properly. And so if you're implanting memories, then that means you're kind of leading somebody down a rabbit hole. I heard a noise. Well, don't you think that might have been your dad? Like that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, absolutely viable, good trauma work for sure.
Yeah, interesting. So I don't really have much to add other than, I've been aware of IFS since the beginning of my career in the mid-90s when it was coming up. And it was kind of strange to me that it was included in the family therapy realm because it has the word family and systems in it, but it's not really a family
it's
theory,
not, no.
and it's not a systems theory.
Well, it is an internal system, like,
But it's not a systemic theory.
not in the way you mean it, like mom, dad, brother, sister, friends. It's internal, the parts inside of you in the system.
No, I mean in terms of general systems theory, which is a theory that applies to any system. But there, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it's often strangely included in family training programs or in textbooks that have all the different theories. And I've often, in the beginning of my career, I was like, maybe I'm not understanding why this is being included. Later, once I got a grasp on systems theory and the field, I was like, oh, this is, and also Richard Schwartz, I think, comes out of the family therapy world. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, so I've just never needed IFS because I had already acquired other theories that are essentially getting at the same thing. Mm-hmm. I kind of see these different layers of depth, like for novice therapists, they would come to me and they would say, I'm interested in, these handful of theories, and one of them would be IFS, and they would say, which should I pursue? And I would say, well, I would choose IFS because it's elegant. It is a lot easier to understand. It's pretty quickly usable. It's pretty intuitive. It resonates with clients.
I'd say it's easy to learn, hard to master.
As any therapy is. But for me, I had already acquired object relations and psychodynamic theory. Mm-hmm. And it's not elegant. It's not easy to understand. It's not easy to teach. It's not easy to comprehend. The literature, I would say 80% of it is in a different language, essentially, even though it's in English, So when I hear IFS, I think, oh, I see. That's just an easier way to explain a lot of helpful ideas within psychodynamic theory. It misses a lot of things, but that's fine because, you don't really need those extra things all the time. Plus, people that are more advanced in IFS probably develop those nuances. The other similar camp to me is schema therapy, which again is a more elegant, easier to understand version of principles in psychodynamic theory that have been established for a long time. So when people come to me and they say schema therapy or psychodynamic, I say, well, the most bang for your buck, schema therapy. Yeah. But if you want to answer the most vexing questions of the human condition, then psychodynamic theory is really the only way to go. But yeah, IFS and schema therapy are, so for me, when I'm trying to boil things down for myself, I turn to schema therapy because I knew about that probably before IFS. The other thing is I also had absorbed enough of Gestalt because it has a lot of Gestalt-y kind of elements to it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a powerful model that emphasizes a very real thing that I think happens for people, that especially our protector mode, right?
Yes.
Our guard dog, our policeman, or whatever you want to call it. Yep. That part of us that comes out when we're threatened or hurt or abandoned or scared or something, and we come out barking or avoiding, we're just like, fuck you, I don't need anyone, or fuck you, I can't, you will text me back when I text you or else, that kind of thing. Yeah. We all do that all the time, and having a dialogue with that part of you, right, and valuing it, yes, not putting it down, right, not telling it to shut up, but right, saying thank you, right, I needed you and I still need you, but let's not always go to you because it's not always helping, or whatever, resolving the traumas that result in needing that part of you, or blah, 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 blah. So yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful model. Now, I don't know anything about the internal fighting or corruption or the training or anything, but
there's a helpful model that, so you can think of it as the solar system, with yourself, your sense of self being the sun, and the parts being the planets that orbit around. Some parts are just as the planets. Some parts are closer to you. Some parts are really far away and orbit, only come around once in a while. Some come around all the time. Some completely eclipse the self. Some are bigger, some are smaller, right? In terms of how much they show up for you. Yeah. But the big tenet of IFS is that all parts are welcome and all parts are protective. So imagine I'm deeply insecure about going on podcasts and what people think of me. And I have all this insecurity because maybe I was publicly shamed as a child, or I had a bad podcast a few years ago and I'm really embarrassed. And so I have this part of me, and that's the wounded part of me, that that's creating all this. And that's where the CBT comes up and creates all this anxiety and these thoughts and these feelings and these sensations of anxiety. And that is that wounded part expressing itself. But I come in here and I suck it up and I'm like, okay, I got to record this show. So I got to lock on, so I'm going to be gregarious and social, and I'm going to kind of put this mask on. Well, that's my social mask coming on to show up for this show. That is sort of eclipsing and protecting the part of me that is upset and insecure. And so in that way, when we think of protectors, yes, it is the fuck you, text me back. Parts can be angry and lash out for sure, but all parts, even this part that you and I are in right now, is adaptive and protective to the situation that we're in. We want to have our social mask on for this context, right? And then we need that part of ourselves. What happens is when we're traumatized, we cut off parts of ourselves, parts that are hurt, too painful to touch. We cut them off. We don't even necessarily know that we do it, and we eclipse them with other parts. So other parts show up. My gregarious part shows up when I feel insecure, for example. And the trick is to let that part that's protecting come back and let whatever's underneath, that pain underneath, be explored and worked with, and not protected, and not protected, not sort of, because in the protecting of it, you also kind of lock it in a room because it's too painful to touch, and then you don't live in it, and then you have this kind of phantom planet in your solar system that is there causing havoc. It's part of the math. It's impacting everything else, but you're not even aware of it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say is that in the comments section, there are people saying that it's sort of culty and there are problematic statements or something among some leaders or some proponents. And what I'll say is that's true about any theory.
Right, exactly.
You can have cult elements in solution focused or in psychodynamic or in CBT or in attachment theory.
Although IFS is very in vogue right now, people are asking for that a lot. In my experience, they'll call it parts work or IFS, but they're looking for it.
And I think it's fine. That of the various theories that could become popular, I think I can stand behind it. And is there going to be a bell curve of sophistication, wisdom when it comes to the acquisition of the theory and use of the theory? Yeah, because that's true with all.
Right.
And that's why it's important when you're looking for a therapist that you vet them.
That they're competent and they know what they're doing. And that's the other thing. Like, you don't have to be, your listeners, or this is asking, you don't have to be certified in it, but the extra training won't hurt you for sure, and is more likely to make you competent so that you don't. Because trauma therapy is, delicate work. And if you were going to cause harm to a client, it would probably happen in trauma therapy, where they're the most vulnerable and that kind of deep work. So like the question we answered earlier about how do I tell my boyfriend he's annoying, like, you're not as likely to cause harm using some sort of theory as you would if I was uncovering deep wounded, injured parts that you've been pushing out of awareness your whole life, So
I did an episode about IFS probably 15 years ago that I think we still rerun at times.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. A friend of mine, colleague of mine, fellow professor, he was a specialist in IFS, and so I asked him to come on the podcast. I remember where we were recording. Back then, I recorded in my bedroom because it had the best acoustics. And so I would...
humble beginnings.
Yeah. I would... push the bed up against the wall to give better acoustics in the bedroom. And I would set up in there. And so that's the vision in my head of recording that episode in my bedroom. All right. Well, Dr. Michael Drane, as always, thanks for coming on the podcast. If people have questions about IFS specifically, might they reach out to you?
Yeah, I have a group practice where we do practice IFS and can give you education, but also services. That would be mindfulremedy@gmail.com or mindfulremedy.net. That's the name of the practice. And yeah, come find me.
Yeah, let's talk about briefly, well, not briefly, let's talk however long it takes to talk about that you're still recruiting for your group practice.
Yep.
So for you therapists out there, particularly if you're early career and looking for a gig and you're licensed in Washington State, then contact Dr. Michael Drane at mindfulremedy
At Gmail.
at gmail.com or go to mindfulremedy.net because Mike is looking for how many therapists?
At least one more. But we're also accepting clients too.
Okay.
So,
right. So if you are a Washington resident and looking for a therapist group practice, and or you're a therapist looking to join a group practice, and you can get free supervision, you'll get free clients because there's a demand, for the clients. And how many therapists do you have currently?
I have my associate that I work closely with, and we're looking to bring on one more now.
Yeah, that was my impression, was that you were going to start small with two, and associates, meaning that you're an associate licensed person, early career, and you are required to get supervision until you're fully licensed.
Right.
But a non-associate, a fully licensed person could also join your practice.
Absolutely. I think it's a function of my personality or whatever, but I keep a high standard. I don't want to work with just anybody, and so I can be selective about. But if we do bring you on, you're going to get damn good training and good experience on things, including IFS, but motivational interviewing as well. I'm really strong on CBT and like those core counseling skills that are so often overlooked and really show up in everything. I think core counseling skills is kind of like, if you are a car, that's you just idling. Like, you should always be using that regardless of whatever theory, and it gets missed a lot.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's touched on, obviously, in graduate school.
Yeah.
But it needs to be repeated
Right.
in terms of instruction and mentorship.
Yeah. If you're a boxer, that's your jab, right? That core counseling skills, that's your go-to bread and butter.
Yeah, but if you did just a month of jabbing and then years of drifting away from jabbing,
right.
then you could be graduated and working as a therapist, and your arms could be at your side flailing around,
Totally.
All right. Well, and if people want to fight you in the virtual world,
I am I do VR boxing. I don't know. I should plug my game tag next time I'm on. I don't even know what it is.
Oh, really?
But yeah. Yes, I will also fight you, which I don't think is like therapeutic necessarily, but could be a lot of fun. So that'll be great.
All right. Well, that is for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.